by 2075, the trends show we're going to have a Muslim majority on this planet. And look it up. There's various different, demographics projections.
Okay.
Maybe the even more disturbing projection is that much sooner than 2075, maybe by 2050, some of the largest metropolitan areas in Europe are going to be Muslim majority. I spent a great deal of time studying Islam in depth and detail. My master's thesis was on Islam and universal human rights. And I went into the Quran, into the weeds of it, into the whole Islamic legal tradition. In other words, the construction of Sharia law from out of the Quran, okay? And if people want to see, my analysis of that, they should read my book, World State of Emergency, which came out in 2017. And in that book, World State of Emergency, I argue very clearly for why. Islam is not reformable. Number one, Islam is not reformable. I'm no fan of Christianity. You've heard me criticize it on your show. But there are fundamental structural and historical differences between Christianity and Islam. Christianity is a religion that came into being 300 years after the time of Jesus. There were a plethora of divergent and conflicting Christian sects at the time, and many rival interpretations of the scriptures. And these four gospels that wound up being canonized in Nicaea also conflict with one another, not to mention the tens of gospels that were rejected at Nicaea and could retrospectively be considered equally Christian, okay? So Christianity is a historical process that took several centuries to evolve. And then after Nicaea, the church over time, over another subsequent millennium, broke up into many different pieces. The Orthodox broke from the Catholics. Then you had the Protestant Reformation. You got hundreds of different Protestant sects. So Christianity is this very polymorphic phenomenon. And even if you want to reject the whole of it, which I do, from a sociological and political standpoint, it's fundamentally different from Islam. The Quran was authored by Muhammad. It was written down in the lifetime of Muhammad by his scribes on the shoulder blade bones of camels, and then subsequently transcribed onto paper. We have not found any divergent copies of the Quran. In other words, there are no alternate versions of the Quran that have survived. So we have to assume that it's been consistently preserved since the time of Muhammad. And what people call Sharia law, in other words, Islamic jurisprudence, is entirely grounded in the Quran. Yes, complex legal systems were built up from out of it later, but the, injunctions about cutting off a thief's arm if he steals, or that a woman only inherits half the property of a man, or that you should beat your wife if she gets out of line, or how you should treat your slaves, meaning slavery is completely justified by Allah. All of this stuff is in the Quran itself. And most importantly, as I lay out in that part of World State of Emergency. By the way, I have an article on my Substack that reiterates some of these core points about Islam that I came out with recently, so people could look at that too. It's called Muhammad's Despicable Religion. So the most important point is that in the Quran...
What year was the Quran written again?
In the 630s, 620s. 620s.
Okay.
Yeah. It was written over a period of 20 some odd years.
Okay.
22 years. And so the most important thing is in the Quran, multiple times, Allah says, remember, the Quran is not written by Muhammad. He's a channeler. Allah is speaking through him, and Allah refers to Muhammad in the third person. Whenever Muhammad is referred to, he's referred to out of Muhammad's own mouth in the third person. And there's some very weird passages in there that have convinced me that he didn't make it up. It's a genuine work of channeling. Okay, so whatever channelers do, look, channelers are a dime a dozen. We got plenty of them. You go any New Age section of a bookstore, you can find like books by 5 different channelers who claim that God is talking through them. All right, Muhammad was one of these people.
Okay. But you think he wasn't grifting? You think he was doing it? You think he was really
and in fact, to be fair to Muhammad, and I hate to be fair to Muhammad, but to be fair to Muhammad, his initial reaction was that either I'm losing my marbles or I'm being possessed by demons. He ran out of that cave where he encountered so he's in this cave by himself, and somebody comes up and grabs him from behind, and he tries to get free, and the person or entity behind him says, recite. And he's like, I'm illiterate. Recite what? And all of a sudden, this stream of narrative like comes through his mind, and he starts reciting it. And he runs out of that cave like, like with the bejesus scared out of him. And by the way, on the way out of that, scampering down the hillside out of that cave, he sees a UFO. And he hears the same voice that told him to recite. He hears it coming from out of the UFO. And he turns his head. He's like, like, what am I really seeing this? And the thing follows him across.
This is in the Quran?
And then later in the Hadith are it's in the Quran, but later in the Hadith, you have a much richer version of this. The Hadiths are the traditions of what Muhammad said and did, passed down through the people who knew him. And so anyway, he gets home to his wife and he says, listen, I'm either losing my fucking marbles or demons are trying to possess me. And his wife had a few Christian friends. And these stupid Christian women convinced Muhammad that God was really talking to him. Okay? So he started to take himself seriously. And then it became a power trip after that. Anyway, the important point I was trying to make is that in the Quran itself, Allah repeatedly claims, this is a complete and perfect book. You are not at liberty to follow some parts of it and reject other parts of it. You cannot change any part of it. It's a word once and for all. It will remain valid for eternity until the day of judgment. Okay? Meaning that all the legal verses in the Quran are unchangeable and they have to be followed, to the dot of an I and cross of a T. And that's the basis of Sharia law. Okay, so now to go back to the demographics. By 2075, the trends show we're going to have a Muslim majority on this planet.
And who projected this?
You can look it up. There's various different, demographics projections.
Okay.
Maybe the even more disturbing projection is that much sooner than 2075, maybe by 2050, some of the largest metropolitan areas in Europe are going to be Muslim majority. And we see what's already happening in Britain.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? And next it's going to be either France or Germany. And look, it's the metropolitan, for better or for worse, it's the metropolitan areas of a country that define its constitution. And they are becoming, majority Muslim.